What if taking a week-long, completely unplugged beach vacation was actually the absolute worst thing a burnt-out founder could do?
I mean, it sounds completely backward, right?
Right, because we have this societal assumption that burnout is just physical exhaustion.
Yeah,
Like that if you just drop everything and walk away, your batteries will magically recharge.
exactly. But today, we're looking at the counterintuitive science of solopreneur burnout.
Yeah, and we're pairing that psychology with the tactical reality of how modern single-person businesses are actually functioning today.
We are pulling from a really incredibly deep stack of sources today. We've got clinical psychology journals on burnout, highly specific tech stack teardowns from F3 Fund.
Oh, those teardowns are fascinating.
They really are. And we also have financial methodologies, plus high revenue case studies from platforms like Many Requests, Forbes, and Fast Company.
So the mission of today's deep dive is to unpack the ultimate playbook for the modern solopreneur. Whether you are currently running your own solo business, sweating through a side hustle, or you are just, insanely curious about how individuals are competing with entire agencies from a laptop in their kitchen.
Which is happening more and more.
It is. This deep dive is going to reveal the exact tools, psychological frameworks, and business models making it all possible. Okay, let's unpack this. Before we look at scaling revenue or setting up complex automations, we have to address the literal engine of the business.
Right, the founder's own mind.
Exactly.
If we look at the psychological research, specifically the work of Dorley McKayley and data from Deconstructing Stigma, they identify this massive bottleneck called the soloist pattern.
The soloist pattern. Okay, what exactly is that?
Well, it's a highly specific manifestation of imposter syndrome, which, by the way, was first identified back in 1978 by researchers Clance and Imes.
Oh, wow. So we've known about this for a while.
We have, and the soloist pattern basically dictates that high achievers will often equate asking for help or delegating with exposing themselves as incompetent.
Ah. So it's essentially like a computer running out of RAM.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's not that the hardware is broken or the founder isn't capable. It's that they have like 85 background applications open. Every minor decision, every fear of judgment, every tiny administrative task.
Right.
And they refuse to close any of them because they think a real entrepreneur should be able to run it all simultaneously. It's like wearing a massive, heavy backpack on a hike and refusing to let anyone else carry it because you're terrified they'll judge your packing skills.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. And what's really fascinating here is how the research shows this playing out across genders when founders face negative feedback or business challenges.
Oh, how so?
Well, men often aim for a state of mastery where they might actually take fewer risks. They sort of retreat to their comfort zones and surround themselves with peers who are perhaps less competent purely to preserve their own sense of expertise.
So they shrink the pond so they can remain the big fish.
Exactly.
And the research shows women handle this differently.
Often, yes. Women facing the soloist trap frequently become counterphobic.
Counterphobic.
Yeah, so instead of pulling back to a safe zone, they push exponentially harder. They overwork, overdeliver, and overprepare to compensate for that underlying fear of being found out or judged as incompetent.
Wow. So they just redline the engine.
Right. They sprint directly toward the stressor, but the cost to their cognitive energy is catastrophic.
Which circles back to that initial question. If you are a solopreneur sprinting toward the stressor or retreating to avoid risk, your RAM is completely maxed out. You're burned out.
Yes.
But wait, if you're listening to this and thinking, I just need to book a flight to Mexico and turn off my phone, the science says you are setting yourself up for failure. Isn't the cure for this just to take a vacation? To just unplug?
You'd think so, but no. If we connect this to the bigger picture, there's a 2025 study in small business economics, and combined with the job demands resources model from Kinwork, it completely upends our traditional view of recovery. Yeah. For a founder, psychological detachment, meaning entirely unplugging from the work, does not actually improve mental health.
I have to imagine that's because, for a solo operator, the business isn't just a job you clock into. It is inextricably tied to your identity.
Precisely.
Telling a solopreneur to completely detach from their business is essentially telling them to stop caring about a core part of themselves.
Exactly right. And the research highlights that founder burnout rarely manifests as just needing a nap. It presents as severe decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue.
Right. It looks like an overwhelming irritability when forced to switch contexts. Say, jumping from a client call to fixing a broken website link. It's the sudden, terrifying loss of the capacity to build anything new.
So the beach vacation doesn't work because the moment you turn the phone back on,
Yeah.
all the context switching and decision fatigue is just waiting for you in the inbox. You haven't fixed the machine, you just hit pause.
Exactly. What actually cures burnout isn't detachment, it's control.
Control.
It is the agency to dictate how, when, and where the work happens. When you are at the mercy of client text messages at 9 p.m. or manually inputting data, you have zero control. Regaining that agency is the only true protective factor against founder burnout.
But if the goal is to get your control back, you have to build systems to handle the chaos. You can't just ignore the emails forever.
Right. You can't.
And building systems requires making decisions about software, processes, and workflows, which is exactly what a burnt-out brain cannot do.
And this raises an important question about how we make choices. Before you even look at a software stack, you need a mental framework to bypass decision fatigue.
What kind of framework?
Anna Burgess-Yang, who is featured in Fast Company, calls this the two-way doors concept.
Oh, I see where this is going. A one-way door is a permanent commitment. You walk through, it locks behind you. Quitting your corporate job is a one-way door.
Exactly. But most decisions in a solo business are two-way doors.
Right. The vast majority, I'd assume.
Yes. Trying a new project management tool, adjusting a price for a new client prospect, or changing your email onboarding sequence. You can walk through the door, observe the results, and if it fails, you just walk back out.
You just reverse the decision.
Exactly. Solopreneurs hemorrhage cognitive energy treating two-way doors like permanent, life-altering commitments. They agonize over choices that could be tested in an afternoon.
If the goal is to make fast, reversible decisions, you can't be locked into massive, expensive enterprise software contracts. You need tools that are cheap and agile enough to test and scrap in an afternoon.
Right.
If you're listening to this and looking at an inflated monthly software bill, the F3 fund, a tech stack teardown, is going to be incredibly validating. You can build an AI productivity automation stack for under $50 a month.
The specifics of how this works are the key. Take workflow automation. The traditional advice is to use Zapier. But the F3 fund, it research points solopreneurs toward a platform called Make, which was formerly Integromat.
Oh, right, because Zapier forces you into an expensive linear model, right? If A happens, then B happens. But business doesn't work in a straight line.
It doesn't. And Zapier's free tier is notoriously restrictive. Make, on the other hand, gives you 1,000 operations a month for free.
Wow, 1,000.
Yeah. But more importantly, it's visual and branching. So if an email comes in, Make can simultaneously route the attachment to Google Drive, send the client's name to a CRM, and draft a response all in parallel without burning through a massive budget.
Let's talk about how AI actually integrates into that, because this is where the mechanism gets misunderstood.
Oh, absolutely.
And most people think using AI means paying $20 a month for a ChatGPT Plus subscription, keeping a tab open, and copy and pasting emails into a chat window to ask the AI to draft a reply.
Yeah.
That is still manual labor.
It is. The strategic move for a solopreneur is bypassing the consumer chatbot entirely and using the OpenAI API, specifically the GPT-4 mini model.
Let's break down the mechanics of an API for a second. Think of the API as a digital dispatcher. It doesn't need a nice conversational chat window. It's a direct pipeline between your automation tool like Make and the AI's brain.
The dispatcher analogy is perfect because you aren't paying a flat $20 fee. You pay fractions of a penny per task.
Right.
The API works invisibly in the background. It reads an incoming email in milliseconds, analyzes the text, labels it as urgent client issue or spam, and routes it to the correct folder or database 200/7.
And speaking of databases, the F3 fund, research is very specific about where that data should live. They recommend Airtable over Notion.
Yes, they do.
Notion is great for writing documents, but Airtable is fundamentally a relational database. It structures data so that your dispatcher, the API, can easily read and write to it.
Exactly. And then for the final piece, transactional emails, they use Gmail filters paired with a tool called Resend.
Why resend?
Resend is crucial because it handles the programmatic emails. So when someone buys your service via Stripe, catches that payment, updates Airtable, and uses Resend to automatically fire off a welcome guide and a receipt.
And the founder never lifts a finger.
Never.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's easy to look at a $34 monthly software bill and think, great, I saved some cash. But your goal shouldn't be minimizing expenses. It should be maximizing the return on your time.
The math from the F3 fund Its source illustrates this perfectly. They tracked a founder who implemented just 10 of these specific workflows, things like lead capture routing to Slack or the AI email triage we just discussed.
Right.
Those 10 automations saved that founder 79.8 hours a month.
Almost 80 hours. That is literally 2 full work weeks materialized out of thin air.
It's incredible.
If you value your opportunity cost at a conservative $50 an hour, you are generating nearly $4,000 of value every single month from a $34 tech stack. That's a 117x return on investment.
And you have now outsourced the chaos to systems. You have your cognitive control back. The burnout risk plummets. But this creates a new challenge.
No.
What do you actually do with those 80 hours?
Well, if you just use that newly freed time to take on more unpredictable hourly freelance work, you're going to hit an income ceiling immediately.
Yeah.
Your time is still the bottleneck.
Yes. This is the critical transition from selling time to selling a scalable outcome. The Many Requests report provides a deep dive into solopreneurs who have shifted entirely to productized services.
Let's define the mechanism of a productized service because it sounds contradictory. A service is customized labor. A product is a fixed item on a shelf.
Right, but you are essentially taking your customized labor and putting it in a box with a barcode.
Okay, I like that visual.
A productized service has a fixed scope, a fixed price, and a highly standardized delivery process. The client knows exactly what outcome they're buying, and the solopreneur knows down to the minute how long it will take to fulfill.
I imagine that completely changes the power dynamic. The client isn't managing your time or micromanaging the process. They're simply purchasing a result.
It creates immense predictability. A prime example from the research is 180 sites.
Oh yeah, I saw this one.
They are generating $950,000 a year as a solo operation. They sell web design, but instead of pitching $10,000 custom open-ended projects that drag on for months, they productized it.
Right.
They sell website packages starting at $180 a month with a mandatory 24-month commitment.
That completely flips the cash flow model. It's essentially a financing arrangement for web design that turns a one-off service into a SaaS-like recurring revenue stream.
Exactly. And Hostify Pro did something similar. They had a software product, but recognized their users needed help managing it.
So they just built a service on top of it.
Right. Instead of offering ad hoc hourly consulting, they packaged a tech support service for a flat fee. It added an additional $100,000 a year in highly predictable revenue.
And Coldlytics took this a step further with the credit system. They do $300,000 a year in lead generation. Instead of a client saying, build me a list of plumbers, which takes a wildly unpredictable amount of time, the client buys a monthly subscription for a bucket of credits. 1 credit equals 1 researched lead.
The credit system is brilliant for unit economics. The client controls their own budget, and the founder knows the exact profit margin on a single credit. It makes scaling the fulfillment, even if you eventually use freelance help, completely mathematical.
So you're building a highly structured assembly line. But an assembly line only works if the raw materials are exactly the same every time. You cannot offer a rigid productized service to everyone.
No, definitely not.
If your target market is anyone with a credit card, your assembly line will break.
You're hitting on the concept of the lighthouse client, which is a framework developed by Ken Yarmush. After analyzing 9 highly successful solopreneurs, he found they purposefully ignore the vast majority of the market. They serve one hyper-specific demographic.
It's like Nosheen Chen from the case studies. She doesn't teach general public speaking to high schoolers, middle managers, and retirees. She teaches public speaking strictly to executives and founders.
Or Matt Barker, who built a massive ghostwriting business entirely focused on LinkedIn. By restricting yourself to a lighthouse client, your marketing language, your sales objections, and your delivery process never change. You solve one specific problem for one specific person thousands of times.
Okay, but if you're serving a very specific niche, how do you get them into your customer acquisition funnel without spending those 80 hours you just saved cold calling people? It's basically the opposite of casting a wide net. You're purposefully ignoring 90% of the market so you can build a frictionless machine for the remaining 10%.
You need a distribution engine that operates with the same leverage as your tech stack.
Right.
The funnel itself is standard awareness, interest, consideration, conversion. But feeding the top of that funnel, the awareness piece, is where solopreneurs usually fail.
Because they try to be on every platform, filming videos, writing blogs, recording podcasts, and they just exhaust themselves. The gold standard to prevent this, according to the sources, is the Justin Welsh content system.
Yes. Justin Welsh operates a business generating over $5 million in revenue with astonishing 94% profit margins.
That's insane.
It is. He has an audience of over 750,000 people, and he limits his content creation to exactly 4 hours a week.
4 hours. The mechanism of how he does that is fascinating. It's the 135 hub and spoke model.
Right.
The newsletter is the hub.
Yeah.
He spends 75 minutes a week writing one deeply researched, valuable newsletter. That is the pillar asset.
Then he utilizes two specific tools, Typeshare and Hypefury. He spends 2 hours taking the core concepts from that single newsletter and spinning them out into 6 to 12 shorter, bite-sized text posts.
So smart.
Typeshare gives him proven templates so he never stares at a blank page. And Hypefury acts as the distribution engine, automatically scheduling those posts across platforms like LinkedIn and X during peak engagement windows.
So he isn't reinventing the wheel for every platform. He's manufacturing one high-quality piece of lumber and then cutting it into different shapes. And he spends the last 45 minutes of that system purely on engagement, replying to comments and building relationships in his specific niche.
Exactly. And the philosophy behind the actual words is just as important as the distribution. He deliberately ignores viral, trendy topics. He prioritizes evergreen content.
Which makes sense because you want content that lasts.
Exactly. A deeply insightful short-form text post about the psychological toll of running a solo business will resonate today, and it will be just as relevant 5 years from now.
So what does this all mean for you? It means you don't need to be dancing to trending audio on video platforms to build a 7-figure business. Chasing viral trends attracts an audience of spectators, not buyers. You need a system that distributes your expertise while you sleep.
And when that hub-and-spoke system inevitably works, it generates a steady stream of revenue, which introduces the final and arguably most lethal trap for a growing solo business.
The trap of expense bloat. Because if you've been grinding for a year and suddenly the productized service is selling and the automations are humming and $10,000 lands in the checking account, the immediate psychological response is, I need to upgrade.
Right. The feeling of growth demands the appearance of growth. Founders will immediately convince themselves they need a $500 a month enterprise CRM, a branding agency retainer, or a part-time assistant they don't actually have the workflows for yet.
You start scaling your expenses to match your ego, rather than your actual operational needs.
To prevent this, our sources point to the profit-first methodology, developed by Core Growth Strategies. It requires a fundamental rewiring of traditional accounting.
Okay, how so?
Well, traditional accounting dictates that sales minus expenses equals profit. Profit is the leftover scrap at the bottom of the ledger.
Right, but profit first flips the formula. It's sales minus profit equals expenses. You extract your profit before you're allowed to pay a single operational bill.
This methodology relies on two incredibly powerful psychological mechanisms. The first is Parkinson's law, which states that resource utilization will always expand to meet the available supply.
Like if you give yourself 2 weeks to finish a project, it takes 2 weeks. If you give yourself 2 days, you magically finish it in 2 days.
Exactly.
The same applies to capital. If you have $10,000 sitting in your main operating account, your brain will creatively justify $10,000 worth of essential expenses.
But if you implement the concept of use small plates and immediately sweep $2,000 into a separate, hidden profit account, your brain is constrained. It has to figure out how to run the business on the remaining $8,000.
And the second mechanism?
The primacy effect. Human beings prioritize the first piece of information they encounter. By literally making profit the first mathematical action you take, you are signaling to your own brain that the health of the business and your own financial reward are the non-negotiable priorities. Everything else is secondary.
The actual mechanics of this in your bank portal are straightforward but strict.
Yeah.
You don't just have one checking account. You set up 5 specific accounts.
First is the income account. This is purely a temporary holding tank. Money lands here, but it doesn't stay here. Second is the profit account. Even if you start by allocating just 1% of revenue, you are building the muscle memory of profitability.
Makes sense.
Third is owner's comp. This is your salary, what you would have to pay someone else to do your daily tasks.
Fourth is tax, usually setting aside 5 to 15%, so you aren't liquidating your savings come tax season. And the fifth account is OPEX, operating expenses. This account gets whatever meager percentage is left over after you, the business, and the government have been paid.
Exactly.
Okay, I have to push back here. Because if you're listening to this, draining your revenue into your own pocket first might feel incredibly irresponsible. Aren't you artificially starving the business of the capital it needs to grow?
It feels restrictive, but the mechanism is actually designed to force innovation.
How does that work?
When your OpEx account is artificially constrained, you simply cannot afford the bloat. You can't buy the $500 enterprise software. So what do? You are forced to innovate. You dig into the API documentation. You build the under $50 make and Airtable stack we talked about earlier, constricting capital forces operational efficiency.
Wow. It's the ultimate guardrail against building a fragile business. Okay, let's step back and look at the entire architecture we've just mapped out for you today.
That's a lot to take in.
It is. We started at the root, the founder's mindset, recognizing the soulless trap as a symptom of imposter syndrome, and understanding that taking a vacation doesn't cure burnout. Building systems to regain control over your time does.
Right. And from there, we reclaimed that control by utilizing the two-way doors mental model to make fast software decisions. We deployed a high-leverage, low-cost tech stack using Make, Airtable, and OpenAI's API to invisibly route and process the administrative chaos.
With the time bought back, we fundamentally changed the business model. We stopped selling hours and started selling productized services. Fixed outcomes for a hyper-specific lighthouse client, turning a chaotic service business into a predictable assembly line.
We fed that assembly line with a 4-hour content engine, using a hub-and-spoke model to distribute evergreen authority across platforms without living on social media.
And finally, we armored the entire system using profit first, leveraging Parkinson's law to force efficiency, prevent expense bloat, and ensure the solopreneur actually captures the value they are creating.
When you look at all of these mechanisms working in tandem, it represents a complete paradigm shift. It proves that being a solo operator today isn't about sheer grit or carrying a heavier cognitive load than everyone else. It is entirely about architectural leverage.
You aren't doing the work of 10 people. You are building a machine that does the work of 10 people for you.
And that leaves us with a really provocative reality to consider. We've just outlined the exact playbook of how a single individual, armed with precise automation, productized constraints, and AI, can generate the revenue and market impact of a 50-person agency from a decade ago.
Which is still wild to think about.
It is. It makes you wonder, if one person can now wield this magnitude of economic leverage entirely on their own from a laptop, what does the future look like for traditional corporate structures? Are we entering an era where the traditional company, as we know it, is rendered obsolete, replaced by fluid, interconnected networks of hyper-efficient solopreneurs?
It definitely makes you look differently at the traditional corporate org chart. Maybe the future isn't a massive skyscraper full of middle managers. Maybe it's just a network of individuals, each running their own perfectly tuned machine. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.